So I'm here today with Catherine Whitaker, who's the CEO and Head of Learning at EtonX. Catherine, thank you for being here. How are you today?
Good, thank you. So it's the second week of the new year, and this week I'm feeling a little bit more like I know who I am and what I do. Last week was a shock to the system, but yeah, we're back up and firing after a nice, relatively long Christmas break.
Awesome. And I know that you tend to share an office with a number of other people. Are you in that shared office today, or are you working from home today?
No, I'm not. I'm actually working at home. Yes, we have an office in central London. We are at the moment only going in on a rota. So I was there yesterday. I'll be back there on Friday, but when I do go in, I'm on my own at the moment. So yeah, working remotely again for as long as we need to.
Now, a quick question, actually, because here we are in January. Some people tend to find that January is a very exciting time and it's energetic and it's forward planning and it's a fresh start and all of that great stuff. Other people tend to find that with dark evenings and rain and cold weather, it sort of tends to get them down a bit. Do you tend to be in the latter camp or the former camp?
I'm definitely a summer person. I was born in the southern hemisphere, and so my birthday's Christmas Eve, and I always say that I was born in summer because I was born in South Africa. I feel like I'm not a natural habitee of northern hemisphere and its winters. So no, I get very excited when we reach the equinox in December, and I know that the days are getting longer, even though it doesn't feel like it. Knowing that every day a few more minutes of daylight is coming our way is how I feel about this time of year.
So I must ask then, without wanting to be too nosy, but how did you end up coming from South Africa to the UK?
Oh, well, I came over a long time ago as a child. My parents were really keen that I started school here, so we emigrated just before I started school in September, and they were really keen to build a new life away from what was the apartheid regime in South Africa at the time. But I've been really lucky enough to go back there. I actually started my career out there. I was a graduate recruit at Macmillan, and I went out to South Africa and in 1995, so just after the first democratic elections, at a time of enormous optimism and excitement in the country, and I was working on textbooks. So we were literally rewriting the history textbooks to tell the real story of South Africa rather than the colonial settlers version, which is what people have been forced to learn before the end of apartheid. So it's a place that's really close to my heart, and I haven't travelled I haven't left the UK since November 2019 because of COVID, and I have a flight booked to Cape Town in February. So I'm really, really hoping that trip comes off. Maybe the first holiday I've had to cancel if it doesn't, but I'm really hoping that, yeah, I get to go back to South Africa for the first time in a very long time.
Awesome. Well, fingers crossed for that. Let's hope that you manage to get away for that. Catherine, I'd love to understand a little bit more about EtonX, first of all. Can you just tell us what EtonX is all about? I think a lot of people have heard the name Eton, but possibly not EtonX. Tell us what it's all about.
Sure. So EtonX is a subsidiary of Eton College, the Eton College that people probably have heard of. And we effectively grew out of the school. So in 2015, Eton took the decision to set up what is an education technology company. Because unlike a lot of other very well-known UK schools, which had decided to set up campuses in the Middle East or Asia, Eton decided that wasn't a route for them. But they were interested in expanding their reach and teaching different kinds of students beyond the confines of the boarding school in Berkshire here. So they took a different approach and thought, well, we're not going to set up a school. And the way to do that could be to invest in an online platform and look at online programs that could reach people all over the world. So having taken that decision to move into technology rather than campuses, the next question was, well, what are we going to teach? What can we offer that's a bit new and different to the obvious things that Eton might be known for, which is doing really well academically. And the decision there was around moving into what are sometimes called soft skills. We like to call them future skills because they're all about students' future. And that's how we started. We started with a leadership development program, which has now grown into a more broad portfolio of courses, but always online. So we are now taught students from, I think it's 70 different countries. And we have courses which really look at three main goals: leadership development, university preparation, and career readiness. And the thinking there is that, yes, a school like Eton does very well academically, but it offers a really broad-based education for its students. And I know the headmaster of Eton is very fond of saying that students learn as much outside the classroom as they do inside the classroom, and they learn as much from each other as they do from other students. Sorry, as they do from their teachers, I should say. So what we're doing is distilling that excellence into a set of courses which anyone can take to expand those into those skills that go beyond the academic curriculum.
So you mentioned about leadership, university, and career readiness, I think you called it. Why are those three so important?
Students at secondary level, and we've come out of a high school that works with students between the ages of 13 and 18. Obviously, while they're at school, they have some exams to get through, but they're also focusing on their future. And we're about helping students have success while they're at school, but in the phases afterwards as well. So leadership is really about communication skills and social and emotional skills. And those are skills which are useful at any stage of your life. Obviously, university preparation is the immediate next step for lots of students, and then after that, career readiness. So we're trying to equip students with a portfolio of skills that will allow them to make the most of the situation they're in at the moment, but also very much with an eye on the future and what comes next. And a lot of what we do at school is about getting through exams. That it can be very easy to get quite tunnel vision about getting good exam grades. We're trying to kind of open people's horizons up to what success looks like in a sort of broader definition of success.
And you mentioned that there are students from 70 different countries. I'm going to presume that that's not an equal distribution of students across those 70 different countries. So which countries would you say are the main countries where you're finding your students?
Where we're working directly with students, we've done a lot of work in Asia. So Hong Kong and Japan have been two territories where we've had sort of steady stream of students from. But we've really worked all over the world. The latest sort of key focus for us is actually Australia, because the school year is about to start in Australia in the new academic year, and we've actually lined up quite a few new schools to work with us. So that's a new focus for 2022.
Okay, so I understand now how EtonX works and why EtonX was created. I think you said in 2015. But what is the partnership with My Online Schooling? How does that look?
We're really excited to be working with My Online Schooling because, like us, they have students all over the world. And the way we work is that My Online Schooling students and parents can choose from our entire portfolio of courses, and we bring them into groups to study using what we call our tutor group model. So that's a group of up to 8 students, very small study group, who work through our courses with an EtonX tutor. So we effectively, My Online Schooling, find groups of students who want to study the same course. We find a time that suits everyone, and then they come together once a week with an EtonX tutor. Our courses are relatively short. Most courses are around 7 weeks long, so they would meet their tutor and that group of students once a week for 7 weeks. And what works really well with My Online Schooling is obviously there's the whole infrastructure of My Online Schooling. So while we look after the students during the duration of the course, we're also in touch with the leadership team at My Online Schooling. So we're providing reporting and reviews about student progress to them. If we think a student needs particular support, we know we can go and talk to the leadership team and make sure that students are getting the most out of the courses. So that's how we're working at the moment, and it's been working really well. And in future, we're hoping that we can integrate that way of working a little bit more tightly into the My Online Schooling programs.
I see. So this isn't a case then of My Online Schooling sort of outsourcing some of their teaching through a back-end supplier, which is yourselves, but instead it's very much providing access to the EtonX courses that are available by making them available to students who are at My Online Schooling. Is that right?
Well, the tutors are EtonX tutors, so it's not outsourcing, as in they hand over to us and never hear how the student's getting on. But the student experience is an EtonX experience, so it's an EtonX tutor, and it also happens in the EtonX platform. So the way the tutor group works is that it's a flipped online learning model. So if I explain that, that means that students come to us once a week, but they have studied some online material on their own before that point. So when we come to a class, they have met some tips and techniques along the way in that week of programmed self-study online activities, and they get to use the class time and the other students and the tutor to put those skills, those tips and techniques into practice themselves. So that whole experience is very much the EtonX experience. But when we work with online schooling, there's a sort of support and communication going on in the background where the My Online Schooling team are aware of how well things are going. They are able to see the student records. They can see who's come to class. They can see who's doing their homework. They can see what the tutor assessment looks like at the end of the course, who's got which level of certification at the end as well. So it's very much a hand-in-glove approach to working together.
So a student at My Online Schooling then really gets the best of both worlds. They get the best of what My Online Schooling provides, but they also have access then to the EtonX courses.
Exactly, yes.
Awesome. And I love this flipped online concept that you mentioned. Can I just jump back to that for a second? Because you started to give like a little bit of an example there. I wonder whether you can just unpack that a little bit more. Just give us maybe a different example of how that actually looks, that flipped online model.
Sure. I mean, it depends a little bit which course we're talking about. But if I take, for example, our public speaking course, so that's a 7-week program. And what students will be doing, then they are learning how to deliver a speech effectively. So, for example, one of the weeks of work is about answering questions effectively. So if you've done your speech and you come to the end, no doubt people in the audience are going to want to ask you questions. What we do in the week, in the activities before they come to class, is we show examples of different types of questions. You get time wasters, you get show-offs, you get the difficult questions you might not be able to answer. How do you handle those effectively, maintain your composure? You might have done a great speech, but if you can't answer anyone's questions, your credibility is going to vanish. So we show students the different kinds of questions they might have to deal with. We give them techniques for dealing with them all. We have some comprehension exercises so they understand when they ask a question, what kind of question is this? And they see some models of good practice. When they then come to class in that week, they actually have a chance to answer questions. So a lot of what happens in an EtonX class is it's very communicative. So obviously, when you're working on your own, that's a really good chance to meet some ideas, get some knowledge, get some input. But when you've got that precious face-to-face time with a tutor and your cohort of other students, you want to be doing. So the doing in this case is having a chance to answer questions. So we put students into pairs, and they have to challenge each other really with questions that they're not expecting. It's too easy if you're doing it on your own and you can choose to ignore a question. You've got if you're working in a pair and someone's asking a question, they're going to want to respond. So we really use that face-to-face time effectively. And then after every class, there's also a moment of self-reflection. So that's the other part. So we have self-study, class time, self-reflection, and then that pattern repeats itself week on week. The courses do vary a little bit. So for courses such as entrepreneurship and creative problem solving, for example, then those are actually project-based courses. So for the entrepreneurship course, students will actually be working in a project group on a business idea refining a business idea. So when they come to class, that's a chance for them to come together as a group and refine their pitch, ready for the final assessment in the last week of the course.
Sounds like a blossoming place for candidates for The Apprentice or something like that to me.
Yes, I mean, one thing I'd say is we're a much more supportive environment, and our tutors are very much facilitators. I wouldn't say any of our tutors would be acting like anyone on The Apprentice. We have though had a couple of clients that we've worked with. They've actually used our entrepreneurship course to more in a Dragon's Den type of a way. So they've had students do the course, and then at the end of the course, they've got students together to do a pitch in front of a panel like Dragon's Den. That's one of the ways we've seen that course implemented. So yeah, Dragon's Den more than The Apprentice, I would say.
Awesome. Okay, that's a great model to replicate for sure. And you've mentioned about public speaking. You've mentioned entrepreneurship. I think the other one you mentioned was problem solving. Tell us about a couple of the other courses that you're making available for students there.
So I talked about those are courses which have the last two have very much a sort of group project element. We have other courses that are actually more individual. So from those I would pick out resilience. For example, resilience is not a group, very much of a group activity. Building your own resilience is quite a personal skill. And although we use the group classes to provide discussion points and sharing of experience, what a student does, the work that they're doing through the process of the resilience course is to complete what we call the resilience log. It's a journal that they are in which the main point of the course is for them to internalize and bring some of those techniques into their everyday life. And it's that's much more of a personal course, which I would say is quite different to say the sort of Dragon's Den environment of entrepreneurship. We also do have study skills courses, or skills that are a little bit more academic focused. So in that category, I'd point to critical thinking, which is something that really helps students with their academic studies, but is also something that's applicable to other areas of life. For example, assessing whether what you're reading in the news is to be trusted or not, or looking for other sides of the argument, spotting faulty logic in people's reasoning. So that in that sphere, we have critical thinking, we have essay writing skills, and research skills as well. So these are kind of skills which help students with their A-level preparation, for example, if they're preparing for university, getting those skills ready to cope with an undergraduate course. The courses are all slightly different, but I think that that model that I described to you is very much the same. So one thing I haven't mentioned is that we actually built our own technology to deliver these courses, because we decided that we wanted a virtual classroom that really facilitated communication between students. So we spent a lot of time last year upgrading that virtual classroom. We've got some really cool features that work really well. First of all, students spend quite a lot of time in very small groups. I mentioned that they study often in groups of about 8, but actually the work that they do is often really in groups of 2, maybe 3 in a breakout room. So they spend a lot of time in a much more focused way with maybe only one or two other students. And what our tutors could do is they can leave students in their breakout rooms. They can set tasks and timers and communicate without disturbing the students' work. So they can see what's happening, but the students they have a nice quiet space to work with another student, and our tutor can pop in and see how they're getting on without disturbing them. And the tutor's very much in control of the experience. So she decides who to bring to the front, who shares their screen, to keep the focus very much on learning and communication. So although the courses vary, the environment and the methodology and the pedagogy are very similar across all 17 of the portfolio.
This is really interesting hearing this. I mean, the more I hear about this, the more, and I think the people listening to this would probably agree, that the more it makes us realize how important these skills are for life. And I'm just thinking to myself that in the world of education, it's almost like society has prioritized the learning of maths and English and history as being more important than these other future skills, I think you called them. And I'm not saying that maths, English and history aren't important, but surely we should be promoting the level of importance of these future skills that you're talking about to be of at least equal importance to some of the more academic things that are sort of expected that we learn. It's almost like it's almost like we need to learn the English, maths and history, but it's nice to learn these future skills. But surely, equally, they should be both together, both as important as each other.
Yes, and I think it's a false dichotomy to say it's either skills or knowledge. And I think this whole debate about the importance of skills, we sometimes worry that academic subjects are only about knowledge acquisition. And actually, I read history at university, and I don't regret it for a minute, because I know that although I can't remember a lot of the detail of what I studied, it gave me the ability to analyze huge amounts of information very quickly, to develop an argument, to my writing skills and my ability to present ideas were very much part. That was you could call it a byproduct, but for me that was the most important part of that subject. So I think when we're learning these academic subjects, we are developing skills at the same time. Definitely, critical thinking is definitely part of many academic courses. But yes, I think there is unfortunately a focus, understandably, on exam results, because in universities and employers and the nations feel they need to have some marker of success that everyone can understand. But we haven't really worked out a way yet of assessing these other skills. It's not straightforward to do so. It's much easier to test whether someone can do an algebraic equation than it is to say, are you good at creative problem solving? Are you an analytical thinker? That's not as easy to assess. So yes, there is definitely a bit of tension there between the things that you have to learn and that you get assessed on, and the skills that will actually get you all the way through life. Because especially the very knowledge-based subjects, that technical knowledge dates very quickly. Somebody who did a science degree, biology, 20 years ago at university is not going to be as up to date as somebody who graduated yesterday. But if they have learned how to learn, if they're good at assessing information, if they're a good thinker, those are the skills that are going to keep them going. And those skills don't date, and it's a lifetime's work. You build these skills up over time. We always really clear that 7 weeks is just the start of what we hope is a journey that goes on beyond the starting point that we have students at.
Well, I'm sold. I think it's fantastic. I think this is a great model. I think these are great things that students should be learning, and I think it's fantastic. Catherine, we need to bring this episode to a close in a moment. But before we do that, if anybody wants to find out more about this, where could they go? How could they find out?
So there's lots of information about our courses on our website at EtonX.com, and you'll find syllabuses for every single course there. And that's a really good way of understanding what the courses cover and which might be the best for your particular child. So there are a range of different EtonX courses, but the great thing about working with My Online Schooling is we're ensuring that we've got a good group of students in order for that study group to form and to learn with and from each other. So when parents have found the right course for their child, we will run that with other students at the same time so that everyone gets the benefit of working together.
Got it. Awesome. Well, Catherine, it's been great hearing all about this. So thank you very much for giving up your time, and thanks very much for being here.
Thanks, Simon. It's been really enjoyable, and we're really looking forward to working with more My Online Schooling students.